Okay, Shabbat Shalom. We're going to start. Sometimes worlds collide in a really remarkable and unpredictable way. Last year, at some point, I saw an advertisement somewhere, some digital advertisement, for a program at UCLA Hillel that was basically going to be displaying a photo essay of pictures that are taken with and about the Abuyadaya Jewish community in Uganda. A community that I have come to be interested in just in general as someone who's interested in the story of the Jewish people, and particularly since coming to Los Angeles because I was aware that Ziegler, the local rabbinical school, had trained Rabbi Gershon Sizomu, who was and now still is the rabbi of that community in Uganda. And I knew there was a close connection or a growing connection between the Los Angeles Jewish community and the Ugandan Jewish community. And so I would have been interested in going to this event just by seeing that. But then I saw who it was with and by. It was with and by Professor Peter DeCherney of the University of Pennsylvania, a name I had not seen and thought of that much in the intervening 34 years since probably the last time he drove me to high school from our neighborhood in Woodbridge, Connecticut. And he was my ride to high school my 10th and 11th grade year. Professor DeCherney's younger brother Alec and I were the same grade. He was a year ahead. Alec was my dearest, maybe my only friend in elementary school. And we were 9 houses away from each other in our little neighborhood in Woodbridge, Connecticut, and then there had been no contact. Occasionally I would see some things that Peter had done on Facebook, but I had no idea of his deep interest in this community, nor that his career, which I'll tell you about at the University of Pennsylvania, had also morphed into this artistic project in capturing the faces, the beauty, the culture of the Jewish communities of Africa. And so when I went to that event last year, he and I started discussing maybe we could bring him back for an event at Temple Beth Am. And Temple Beth Am also has connections to the community because Daphne, who's with us, is a member of our community. Her husband Samson is a student at Ziegler. Daphne is Rabbi Gershom's daughter, so she grew up in that community. And we thought it would be lovely for Peter to give an introduction to his work, to share a little bit about what he has explored in this part of Jewish life, and then to be in a conversation with Daphne about what life is actually like there. And coming full circle-ish, as many of you know, we have a synagogue trip every year. We go to interesting places where there's Jewish history and hopefully some interesting Jewish future. This coming year, we're going to Poland and to Prague and to Hungary. Some of you will be on the trip. And although it's not certain yet, we hope that the synagogue trip we take in 2026 will be to Africa. And we'll spend Shabbat with the Abuyadaya Jewish community in Uganda, and also Shabbat with the indigenous Jewish community in Kenya, and then see some wildlife and safari adventures in between. So there's a lot going on in this nexus, and it's really a wonderful full circle delight for me to invite to the Bima at Temple Beth Am, Professor Peter DeCherney of University of Pennsylvania to explain everything about what you're about to be exposed to. And then after we do Havdalah, we're going to see 2 short videos about the work and the community. So Professor DeCherney, welcome.
First, a little present for you. This is an Abuyadaya kippah. Thank you. It's someone here. This man over here has the traditional Abuyadaya kippah. This though is made actually by the Orthodox community in Futi, and made by that woman who's in the picture right here, the Rebbetzin at Futi. Anyway, thank you so much for having me here. It's really nice to be here. I have, although we haven't been in touch for a while, we are friends on social media, and so I've seen events and sermons and things from your community for a long time through social media. So it's great to be here in person. So in some ways, I'm the worst guest to have on Shabbat because I'm a filmmaker, a photographer. Usually, I'm better with my show and tell. You get to see a few photographs here, and then after Shabbat is over, we can look at some films, 2 short films that I made last summer in Uganda. Where does this start? I think this journey started for me in college. My freshman year of. Oh, can you hear? Is it better here? Okay, sorry.
Get as close to the mic as you can, and there's also people on Zoom will be relying on the mic.
Okay, I didn't realize we had Zoom as well. Yeah, no. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and then really looking forward to hearing your questions and being a conversation. And Adam, let me know if you need a ride home today.
Thank you. The old Beamer?
Exactly. Yeah, that was the worst car of all time. Oh my God, it broke down constantly. In my freshman year of college, during winter break, I went to Israel. It was 1990, and I was part of a program, and I got to work with members of the Ethiopian Jewish community who had recently emigrated to Israel as part of Operation Moses. It was before Operation Solomon. And then in 2018, I was working on another film about Israeli history and started to learn more about the Ethiopian community that still existed in Ethiopia. Like many people, I knew about the airlifts in the 80s and 90s. I assume that all maybe of that community had now relocated to Israel. It was hard to find out about the community that was still living in northern Israel, northern Ethiopia, in Gondar, and so that other project blew up, and I was really thrilled. I immediately applied for a grant, and in 2019, 2020, I went to Gondar, Ethiopia, interviewed people, started to learn about the community, and to film them. And though I was there last, right before the pandemic hit, turned that into a film called Dreaming of Jerusalem. It's on Discovery Plus, which no one has, but as we showed that film at festivals, at schools, I started to realize that people didn't know the history of the community, the thousands of years of history, an amazing, amazing story of history, and also they didn't know there was a community still living in Ethiopia. So I went back every year over the last few years and continued to photograph them, and now that work is coming out as a book called Endless Exodus, about the Jewish experience in Ethiopia. Among other things in the book, I was there for holidays, I was there for Purim, I was there for Passover, but also a really difficult time for them. Tourism disappeared during the pandemic, then there was a civil war, and everyone that I knew there lost family, friends as a result of the war. I tell stories in the book about men who were kidnapped and then ransomed back to their families to raise money for the civil war. The Jewish community was specifically targeted because they have relatives in Israel who would then send the money. And actually, now that the war's over, that's just become a big business there. It's an even worse problem. I also tell the story of the soccer team in the film and again in the book. And I'll get to Uganda in a minute, but this is interesting background, I think. The soccer team, they wanted to have a soccer team for many years. There are always kids playing soccer outside of the synagogue. And then eventually they were able to raise money through a rabbi in Haifa, Rabbi Menachem Waldman, who goes every month to Ethiopia and has been their rabbi for over 30 years. He raised money for them to have jerseys so they could play in the soccer league. They were terribly bullied, attacked by the other teams. Nevertheless, they made it to the finals. They won 2 of the 3 final games, and they claimed they would have won the third, but it was on Shabbat. They couldn't get the game moved, and of course, they weren't going to play on Shabbat. So as I went back, I would often meet with the coach from the soccer team, Getu, and I went back the last time, and he wasn't there. And so I was in Israel right before October 7th. I actually left hours before the attacks. I left October 6th. And one of the things I was doing there was meeting up with Getu, the soccer coach. I was with him at the hotel as he was dancing and holding a Torah, and his dream had come true. And then obviously I had to call him 3 or 4 days later. He lives in the South, and I had to make sure that he and his family were safe. And luckily they were, they still are. And so as a result of that project, I started to become much more aware of all the Jewish communities in Africa. There are ancient communities like the Lemba Jews in South Africa and Zimbabwe. Like the Ethiopians, there are many, many emerging communities in Cote d'Ivoire, in Madagascar, in Cameroon, and others. The Ugandan community, though, has a unique story. And that made sense to start to go to Uganda next. I already had known I knew a lot of people who had been to Uganda. A lot of Americans go. Judith Gigliotti, who's here, has been going for decades and is a great supporter of the community. But also, like so many people, I met Daphna's father, Rabbi Gershom Suzomu. He comes to Philadelphia fairly regularly, and just is a great advocate for the community. And so I contacted Rabbi Gershom, who's in the picture over here, and started, have been a couple times over the last few years. Another part of my story is I always bring students, and they support the photography projects, the film projects, we can talk about this later. But sometimes the stories about Jewish students encountering these communities they didn't know about that are very different from them, and non-Jewish students encountering them, even post-October 7th, has been sometimes more as interesting as the stories we tell on camera. So I'll just give you a very kind of thumbnail history of the Abuyadaya, and I can point to a few of the photographs here. So the Abuyadaya starts in 1919. A local ruler, Semi Kakangulu, decides to break with the British, who he'd been working with, to break from the missionaries, from Christianity, and to convert himself to Judaism. It's an anti-colonial move, and he starts a new community of Jews. Eventually, he starts to connect with other Jews from around the world. He learns more, and the community develops to around 8,000 people by the 1970s. Then in 1972, Idi Amin, the dictatorial president of Uganda, outlaws Judaism and other small religions, basically everything except Islam and Christianity. And so the Jewish population dwindles to just a few hundred. They're forced to convert. The Jews that continue to practice secretly in a cave. It's actually this cave right here. That's at the bottom of a ravine. And you'll see one of the films is about the cave. In the cave is J.J. Keck, Daphna's uncle. He was 11 at the time and remembers going, and in the film we'll see him tell his story about going to the cave. So during Idi Amin's reign, you probably all know the story of Entebbe, right? A hijacked plane, hijacked by Germans and Palestinians, lands in Entebbe. The Israeli army, miraculously comes in, saves all of the hostages, only loses one member of the army, Yoni Netanyahu, and that becomes a really important moment for the small Jewish community that exists. And so once Idi Amin's gone, Keki and Rabbi Gershom and a third brother decide they're going to restart the Jewish community. And the Entebbe raid had been an important moment for them to help them to gain some more enthusiasm for what they were doing. They couldn't just restart it. The land that Kakangulu had occupied, where the synagogue was, now belonged to other communities. They took that back by force. And Nabagoya Hill, they rebuilt the Moses Synagogue, which had existed there before Idi Amin. Now it's the Stern Synagogue, built on that same location. You can see a picture over here of just a Monday morning service at the synagogue. Any other pictures from their synagogue? No. And so how did they restart the community? They built a kibbutz in Uganda, and they started to rethink the Jewish music. So they kind of created a hybrid of Ugandan folk music and Jewish music. They were cool. It was fun. People really started to join, and there are dozens of stories of kind of what happens after that. There are about a dozen synagogues today, mostly in eastern Uganda, around the Mbale region. So Nabagoya, that synagogue is still the kind of the main locus, but you can go pretty far north and find other synagogues. What other pictures do we have here? I can tell you about a few of the stories of the pictures here. You'll see the second film is about a woman named Rachel Namadosi, who's J.J. Keck's daughter. She is in the field over here. She's a Grammy-nominated singer. Another part of the story is all the connections they've had to the U.S. I actually very lucky. So I've been meaning to meet with this man for a while, but I just bumped into him a few weeks ago. So all the politicians are in Pennsylvania right now because that's where the election is going to be decided. I was in an event for Democratic candidates a few weeks ago, and they announced that this man Matt Myers, and next week will become the governor of Delaware, was there. And so I ran up to him and I said, I've been meaning to talk to you for a long time, because even though he's about to become the governor of Delaware, In the 1980s, he was a Brown undergraduate doing a semester in Kenya. On Yom Kippur, he went to the synagogue in Kenya and sat next to a teenager who would become Rabbi Gershom. And they had been connected for years. He helped raise funds for the rebuilding of the Moses Synagogue. Actually, one other story about Gershom I forgot to mention. So after the raid in Entebbe, he decided that one day he would become a rabbi, and he renamed himself Rabbi Gershom. That became his name before he came to LA and actually became a rabbi. Who else is here? So this is a woman in a village right outside of Kampala, a village called Makono. They're very recent converts. Like a lot of people in a lot of these communities, they start out as Christians, Messianic Christians who are experimenting with religion, find Judaism, often through the internet. They call it Rabbi Google. But then eventually find their way to the Abuyadaya community. And when I went to Makono, the religious leader there, their Hazan, I mean, he has amazing synagogue skills, Hebrew skills. They're very open to intermarrying across the different villages, and so the communities remain really close and connected in that way. This is a young man here, Yaakov. His mother knits the best kippot in Uganda. If you want, he's taking orders always. And I'll say two more. So the woman over here who has the photo in front of the window, her grandmother was a Jewish woman living in Kenya and decided to go to Uganda to find more Jews. She actually met J.J. Keck here in Kenya. He brought her to Uganda. And then this is her granddaughter who married another man in the Abuyadaya. And then the final story here, and then we can open it up. The man in front of the sunrise is a man named Yosef Kibita. This is a picture from October 4th or 5th, 2023, so just days before the October 7th attacks. He lives in Israel on a kibbutz that many of you have probably gone to or know, Kibbutz Keturah in the south near Eilat. So I went to interview him and photograph him and talk to him. For 6 years, he was trying to become the first Ugandan to make Aliyah, to officially become a citizen. He's been converted to Judaism 4 times. He argued his case, or had his case argued before the Israeli Supreme Court 3 times. But when I met him, after spending 2 days with him, it was really clear he would become a citizen, and the Israeli government was never going to, never had a chance. No. And so, I had to call him 2 or 3 days later, like Getu, and say, are you safe? And he was, and his family is, and he still is. Just about a month ago, a little less than a month ago, he became a citizen of Israel. So he's the first Ugandan citizen. Anyway, maybe we should open up. Yes, Daphne, please.
So our sense is that the next part would be a little free-flowing to give you a chance to meet Daphne and for Daphne to meet all of you and to have her personal narrative about what it was like to grow up in that community and her connection to some of Professor DeCherney's work. And then as it gets darker, we'll pause for Mariv and Havdalah and then watch the videos that have been brought and maybe more of an opportunity for Q&A. So Daphne, do you want to share a little bit about your childhood and your upbringing, what it's like in your community in Uganda, and also what it's like for you to have made the transition here to Los Angeles as Samson is studying to be a rabbi? And speak as close to the mic as you can.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you all for coming. It's very nice to see a large number of people today. I grew up actually in so many places because I was born in Uganda. Then when I was 7 years old, we moved here when my dad was given a chance to study at Ziegler. So I'll talk about my years here because that's when I start to remember when I was 7. It was hard leaving Uganda and coming to the United States for the first time. You know, Uganda generally, it's like a poor country. There was no electricity, there was no running water. So leaving that environment and coming here was like a life-changing moment. And at the same time, it was hard because we had to learn how to do certain things. We had to learn how to use dishwashers, how to use microwaves, ovens. So it was a bit tricky, but with time we got adjusted. And that journey was actually very interesting because we got to learn. Sorry. So like we learned a lot, and then what my dad learned, he took it back to the community, and it grew from. By then, we used to observe like traditionally what was in the Torah, but then him having the Masorti, the conservative learning, the studies that he got, we were able to grow the community even further. And going back, as you can see that photo of, he's called Moshe. More people got to learn Hebrew and learn how to read Torah, how to lead services. So now, if you come to the community, you will see so many young people, most especially women, leading services. Before that, before coming to the United States, we didn't have women leading services. It was basically, I remember having, it was not a mechitza, but women would sit on one side and men would sit on the other side. So now, getting to learn more, it's, we all sit together and we all participate in the service in one way or the other. Fast forward 20 years later, my husband Samson Inderitu, he's from Kenya, where that lady comes from. His story takes another chance, I think. But he came to Uganda with her and some other young people from her community, from their community in Kenya, Olkalao. It's called Olkalao, Kenya. And they came to study. This was, I think, 2005, around 2005. So they came when my dad was still here, when we were all still here, but they were able to get the knowledge from the other leaders who were there, the likes of JJ and my late Uncle Aaron and so many other people. So he came to Uganda to study, and that's how we met, where we met 2010, I think. Yeah. So he got inspired to be a leader, to become a leader, and he was among the people who would lead services and read Torah, and he got inspired to become a rabbi through that. So in 2019, there was a rabbi's delegation which came to Uganda, and he was offered to come and study at Ziegler. And fast forward, here he is, and with me and our daughter Shira, and we're embarking on this rabbinical journey together, and we hope to take back this knowledge back to our communities, now Kenya and Uganda. Yes.
So in a second, we'll pause for a few questions before Mari. But I also want to note that we have a delegation here today from De Toledo High School in the West Valley, because one of the many things, and that you can tell us more about this than I know, their international studies program is that there is a group of students that go every year, every other year to, why don't one of you tell the story, because I'm going to mess it up. So what, some of you are about to go, right? You're going to Uganda soon? Come talk, tell us. Next week, all right. I'm going to sit down, you tell, because I will, you know better than I.
Hi everyone, Shabbat Shalom. Come on over. You're going to talk about the spirit. Okay? See you. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. My name is Lior Siboni from the Toledo High School. I'm the Director of Global Jewish Education. We have great opportunity to connect our students with schools, Jewish schools around the world. Of course, with Israel, exchange programs, Europe, South America. And we have this wonderful opportunity to connect with the Abuyadaya community in Uganda as part of our science program. We first went there 2 years ago, which was really a life-changing experience. That's where we also met Daphna and Rabbi Gershom, and the students will tell us what are we doing? What are we doing in Uganda? Tell us.
Hi, I'm Eleanor. My dad is Mark Samuel. If you, we're going on Wednesday to Uganda to we're also learning about the spirulina program, which is a superfood that provides nutrients. And we're the four of us, and there's 3 other students that's going, and we have Lior coming with us, and Miss H, the head of the science department, coming with us on Wednesday. And we are so excited to go and learn a lot about the Jewish community and how they live, and just learn a lot, because yes, we're coming with the spirulina, but we're learning more from them than they're going to learn from us. And we're really excited, and we cannot wait to come back and share all of our experiences with everyone here and anyone we meet. Thank you.
So really, what a wonderful opportunity for us. What a brilliant timing that our students are here. We have a total of 7 girls, courageous girls. And yeah, Hannah, you want to say something? Only girls? Yeah.
It's such a wonderful opportunity to go as a community and take our American Jewish experience that we have and bring it to Uganda, and then they can share with and they can share with us. And I think it's a good exchange of learning about their community and ours. And then we'll also get to teach them, and we'll learn from them about their spirulina, which is their superfood, and it's a wonderful experience.
And it really was coincidental in timing. So sometimes providence is a real thing. So let's have Peter and Daphne, if you will, open it up for questions about the community, about the project, and then in about 10 minutes we'll pause for Mariv and Abdallah, and then we'll have an opportunity to screen the movie. So Phyllis has a question.
Wait, so spirulina, I have a question about spirulina. It's like a green algae-like stuff that's grown in a greenhouse. That's right.
It's like made it's an algae.
Yeah.
Made in pools with cheesecloth.
Yeah. At the Semikakangulu Secondary School, they have a greenhouse where they grow it. Yeah.
This is the greenhouse basically that Toledo built in 2018 at the community. So they don't harvest so much, but whatever they harvest there is a great source for malnourished little kids, and we hope to continue and develop it.
What he said was that the DeCherney has built a greenhouse in the community to help nourish and cultivate the spirulina. We're going to repeat the questions on the mic because there are people watching on live stream and they won't be able to hear if it's just from the field. So, Phyllis.
My first question is obvious. Why did he convert in 1919? You skipped that part.
Why did the...
Yeah. Well, why
You gotta
did?
repeat it.
Do you want to do an answer about Kakangulu?
I mean, that's the origin story, and yet why?
So in 1919, there were Christian missionaries who were in Africa, and they were using leaders to get converts. So they handed Semeka Kungulu the Bible, and the Bible had the Old Testament and the New Testament. So he read both, and he said the Torah spoke more to him, and he started observing what was in the Torah. Yes.
Can you talk about, is there like anti-Semitism or jealousy from non-Jewish communities towards the community that they see growing? Or how are the relations with neighboring communities and within there?
Okay. She's asking if there is anti-Semitism in the community and what is the relationship with the community and our neighbors. So I'll go back in like the time of, what's his name? Sorry, Idi Amin. There was anti-Semitism by then, because Semeka Kungulu, he outlawed Jewish practice, and so there was a lot of hate against the Jews, and that's why people were forced to pray in the caves and in their houses and under the beds. But once he was overthrown, there has generally been peace. We don't have, I've not heard of any hate against the community. And I would add, my father was running for parliament, and he got votes from mostly the Muslims from the area, because the Jewish population is not so big to give him the votes. Oh yes, and I also went to a Muslim school. And I was okay.
And your school includes a lot of non-Jews. Some can go to high school.
Oh yes, the school contains all religious sects. Yes.
Barry?
How far back in time does Judaism go in Uganda, and is it a similar long history to Ethiopia?
It goes, oh, sorry. He's asked how far along does Judaism come in, you said Africa? In Uganda, and compared to Ethiopia. So started in 1919, so that's over 100 years ago. Yes. Oh, and the relationship with Ethiopia, I would say it's different, because Ethiopia is, you know more about Ethiopia. So.
So Ethiopia is an ancient tradition, an ancient community. The other ancient community in Africa is the Lemba, who are based in southern Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa. There are actually DNA studies that place the Lemba historically in Yemen and the Middle East. And there are actually new studies from University College London, hopefully these will be able to be published, that tell a much more nuanced story, but also confirm that. These communities have mostly been, have very separate histories. They haven't connected much until very recently. But there's now a Sub-Saharan African Jewish Congress that has met twice, and hopefully there'll be a third meeting in Cameroon in the spring or summer.
Rachel?
Yeah, I have a number of questions and comments. I think I met you, Daphne, in your community in 2019. I was visiting with a group of 7 or 8 Jewish women who had taken a tour of the national parks, and then we came to your Tindaboya, if I'm saying that correctly, for Shabbat, and it was lovely. I was very struck by how happy all the people in your community are. My kind of question is, I was also struck, our various tour guides Uganda with mixed marriage, which is usually Christian and Muslim, but I wanted to know if that affected the Jewish community at all, and if so, how?
Her question is whether intermarriages affect the Jewish community. So I would say yes, because since we're few in numbers, and so some people are forced to marry outside of the religion. That's been a problem. Yeah.
We'll do one more, and then we'll dive in, and then there'll be opportunity for more. Yes, Rebecca?
I have two.
Two for one.
One question is if you can explain what the name means of the, is it a place or something? And then the second question was, you mentioned really quickly something about a kibbutz, and I wasn't sure if I didn't hear right or if it was actually a kibbutz. If you could say something.
Okay, so what does Abuyadaya mean?
Okay. So Abuyadaya means Jews, and it also means the people of Judah. In Uganda, Abuyadaya, it means the people of Judah.
Yes. So as I mentioned, after Idi Amin is gone, it leaves power. Gershom and J.J. Keke and Aaron, they're a third brother, start a kibbutz. They are reading about Israeli history. They're thinking about how to restart their religion and rebuild it, and they decide to have a communal enclave on Nabagoya Hill. And it runs for a while. Everyone starts to get married, and then they move away. And so it just kind of slowly breaks up. But yes, there's a kibbutz. I'm going to tell one other story that. A lot of Americans go to Uganda, and not a lot, but at many congregations. Part of it is because Daphne's father is such a great ambassador and travels around the U.S. and tells this story. But also, he was ordained in the U.S. He moved back to Uganda. And started, as Daphne said, bring a lot of American-style Jewish practices to Uganda. When you meet other communities in Ethiopia, but even more so the Lemba in southern Africa, a lot of their practices look different, strange, sometimes even funny. They wear their talit when they're having dinner together. It's their traditional costume. I was having dinner with them, and they said, "We are strictly kosher, cheeseburgers for everyone." So the very next day, actually, I went to Mbale. I saw Gershom, and I asked him what he thought about the Lemba, and he said he came back from the U.S. He changed the religious practices. He started a yeshiva, and he said, "Lemba, other Jews from around Africa, come study with me, and I will teach you Judaism." And the Lemba said, "We have been Jews for thousands of years. Anything we do is African Judaism. You've been colonized by the Americans. We don't recognize your Judaism." And to me, that's actually the kind of foundational story as I try to do research, try to amplify stories of people from around Africa. The things that look familiar to us, tefillin, kippot, Magen David's, that's great, and that shows a connection. The first time I went to Ethiopia, 10 minutes after getting there, I cried because they were singing the same tunes that I know. But it's actually a lot of the elements that look unfamiliar, the instruments and the music in Uganda, the kippot, that are also that are harder to see and take some time, but are actually the more important elements. Because I think this is a really important story to tell now and to keep telling as global anti-Semitism is on the rise. I think it's more important than ever to celebrate, to embrace, to amplify the diversity of Judaism. As I take students, it's really hard for non-Jewish students to learn that there are Black African Jews at all. It might be harder for the American students, the American Jewish students, to accept that and understand it.